Welcome, friends. The funeral was heavy with silence, the air thick with sorrow, as the little girl lay peacefully in her coffin. The mourners lowered their heads, holding back tears. Suddenly, a black raven descended from the gray sky and landed gently on her coffin. The crowd gasped in shock, watching in disbelief as the bird stood on her chest, its sharp eyes fixed on her face. And then the unthinkable happened. The girl's fingers twitched ever so slightly. The raven let out a haunting cry, spreading its wings as though declaring something beyond human understanding. Gasps turned to cries, and in that single moment, grief transformed into hope. The silence broke with whispers. She moved. She's alive. This was no ordinary farewell. It was a miracle. A moment that no one present would ever forget. Friends, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share. And remember, you're watching Soul of Kindness. Welcome, friends. The church bells had just stopped ringing when the raven landed silently on the little girl's coffin. Everyone froze. Mothers pulled their children closer, elders whispered prayers, and a heavy cloud of fear swept through the funeral. The raven tilted its head, staring strangely at the girl's still face. Its behavior was so weird, almost as if it understood something no human could. Then, before anyone could move, the girl's chest rose with the faintest breath. A trembling hand lifted slowly, as if reaching out for life itself. Tears rolled down her mother's face, her voice breaking. "My baby. She's alive." The crowd erupted in disbelief. Some dropping to their knees, some crying loudly, unable to believe the miracle unfolding before their eyes. In that instant, sorrow turned to trembling joy. The raven lifted its wings and let out a cry that echoed through the sky, as though it had been sent as a messenger of life. What was meant to be a final goodbye became the beginning of a story no one would ever forget. Friends, if this moment touched your soul, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share. You are watching Soul of Kindness. Welcome, friends. The funeral ground had grown heavy with grief. Clouds darkened the sky as if heaven itself mourned the little girl who lay in her coffin. Family members stood close, their sobs blending with the sound of the cold wind brushing through the trees. Every flower placed on her coffin felt like the last goodbye, and every tear falling into the earth carried the weight of shattered hearts. Then something strange happened. A raven, black, silent, and majestic, descended from the skies. It landed right on the little girl's chest, folding its wings, looking into her face as though it had been waiting for this very moment. The crowd gasped in shock. Children hid behind their parents. Some called it an omen, others whispered it was a sign from the heavens. Seconds stretched into eternity. The raven tilted its head and let out a piercing cry that echoed through the graveyard. And then the unthinkable. The girl's hand twitched. Her eyelids fluttered as though she was fighting her way back from a deep slumber. Gasps turned into screams. People stepped back, some in fear, some in awe. Her mother rushed forward, falling to her knees beside the coffin. With trembling hands, she whispered, "Sweetheart, it's me, Mama. Can you hear me?" A faint breath escaped the girl's lips. Her chest rose and fell, slowly but surely. The impossible had happened before their very eyes. The raven spread its wings, lifted its head to the heavens, and cried once more, a sound that sent chills down every spine. Then, without hesitation, it flew upward, vanishing into the stormy sky, leaving behind the miracle it had awakened. The silence of mourning was replaced with the cries of joy. Strangers embraced each other. Families wept with gratitude. And the mother clutched her daughter, refusing to let go again. What had begun as a farewell had transformed into the greatest gift, second chance at life. Friends, if this story touched your soul, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share. And remember, you are watching Soul of Kindness. Welcome, friends. The cemetery was wrapped in a heavy silence. Clouds rolled across the sky, covering the sun, as if even nature mourned the little girl lying motionless inside her coffin. Family and friends stood still, their faces wet with tears, their hearts weighed down with unbearable sorrow. Every second felt endless, as if time itself had stopped. Then the raven returned. No one expected it, yet it swooped down from the sky again, circling above before landing firmly on the coffin lid. Its black feathers glistened under the dim light, and its sharp eyes scanned the crowd before fixing back on the girl. Everyone shivered, some whispered in fear, some in awe. "This is no ordinary bird. This is a messenger," an old woman muttered with trembling lips. The raven cried out loud, echoing, haunting. The sound was so powerful it felt as though it pierced straight into every soul present. And at that very moment, something extraordinary happened. The girl's lips parted, a faint whisper escaping her mouth. Her mother leaned close, tears streaming down her cheeks. "What is it, my love? Speak to me." The girl's small, fragile voice broke through the silence. "Mama." Gasps filled the graveyard. The priest dropped his book, his hands trembling. Children clung to their parents, their eyes wide with disbelief. The mother clutched her daughter's hands, sobbing uncontrollably, shouting with joy, "She's alive! My baby is alive!" The raven lifted its wings again, spreading them wide as though shielding the girl from the darkness that tried to claim her. Its presence was no longer frightening, but protective, almost holy. People knelt, some praying, some crying, some unable to believe what they were witnessing. Then, just as mysteriously as it had arrived, the raven rose into the sky, circling once before disappearing into the clouds. It left behind not fear, but hope, a living miracle. The funeral that began in grief ended in celebration, in tears of joy and hugs of disbelief. That day, everyone learned that sometimes, even in the darkest of moments, life has a way of breaking through. Friends, if this moment touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. And remember, you are watching Soul of Kindness. Welcome, friends. The graveyard, once filled with sorrow, now echoed with gasps of wonder. No one could believe what they had witnessed. The little girl who had been declared gone had opened her eyes, breathed again, and spoken her mother's name. But the miracle was not over. The raven returned once more, soaring high above, its wings cutting through the gray sky like a shadow of destiny. The crowd looked upward as the bird circled slowly, almost as if it were blessing the scene below. It gave one final cry, a sound that was neither fearful nor haunting, but powerful, like a trumpet of victory. The girl sat up, weak but alive, her mother's arms wrapped tightly around her. "He came back to me. You came back," the mother wept, rocking her daughter against her chest. Every tear falling from her eyes was no longer of sorrow, but of gratitude. Strangers clapped their hands. Some knelt in prayer, others hugged one another, knowing they had witnessed something greater than life and death itself. The priest, still trembling, whispered aloud, "This child was touched by heaven." The raven was not a curse. It was a messenger of light. Suddenly, the clouds began to part. A golden ray of sunlight broke through, shining directly onto the little girl's coffin. The flowers that had been laid on her coffin seemed brighter, alive, and the breeze carried a warmth that touched every soul present. The raven disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind peace in its wake. From that day onward, the story spread across towns and villages. People spoke not of the girl's death, but of her second life. They spoke of the raven that came in the darkest moment and became the bearer of hope. And most of all, they spoke of a mother's love strong enough to call her child back from the edge of eternity. The funeral that began with mourning ended as a celebration of life, and those who were there carried that miracle in their hearts forever. Friends, if this story touched your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. And remember, you are watching Soul of Kindness.